we call the Twilight Zone.
Steve Kerr, and you look at Steph and Clay, and even Draymond with his lack of.
He's at 2 in a row, 7 points for him. The twirling Doncic, melting into the defense. The front carry strikes. Swing, fly ball, well hit left center. Ronald Acuna has homer. Rookie rushing record for the Steelers.
Look, he came into this game averaging 3.67 yards per carry. 42nd out of 49 qualified rushers.
Freeze to begin the third quarter. It has been incredible. There he comes again. Oh, goodness. And the Greek basketball god. And he was a great guy that teaches that
That clip of Tiger Woods always pumps me up. Like right as we're getting ready to go in, and I'm just like, I'm sitting there glued to it. And like I need to learn to snap out of it because like I remember watching that live. This shit was awesome. But welcome to Line to Game. Sorry, just fucking zoned out. Line to Game Thursday night. Todd,
What are we doing?
Bobby, Aaron, gentlemen, hello, good evening.
Is it a podcast?
Is it? I don't know. We're just gonna sit here and bullshit for the next 2 hours. So
Probably, yeah.
I like it. I like it.
no, welcome. How's everybody's weeks going?
It's going all right. It's been a little bit of, I feel like it's been a little bit of a drag week for me personally. I'm ready for the weekend.
Todd,
Dude. Oh God, I wish I could. I wish I could say the same. Thursday crept up on me fast. Your boy was at work today, scrambling to get all of his shit done so he could leave at 4:00 tomorrow, like I normally do.
Nice.
I've made a commitment to Mary that if I have to stay any later than 4:30 on a Friday, I'm not working hard enough during the week. That's the goal I've given.
That's a good metric.
that's fair.
Thank you.
It's
Yeah.
fair. Yeah, I mean, you have the option to not work until 5 on Fridays or 4 on Fridays. I mean, I would do everything I can to get out early and get my weekend started.
Yeah, dude. Every time 3:00 rolls around on Friday, I'm like, what can I start that makes it look like I'm working just hard enough to get through this last hour, but I don't have to commit to anything. That's my goal. And usually I find the one thing that I could do for 45, 50 minutes, and then the last 10 minutes just ho-hum around, like make it look like I'm sorting my desk out, but really I'm just dipping around.
Just twiddling the old thumb.
Bobby liking the stream. What's up, Bobby? How you doing tonight, buddy?
I've heard he's doing okay. Well, we got a lot to talk about tonight. We got a lot to dig into. Obviously, we can't really escape it. We're just going to lead off with it. Big news in the NFL world in regards to Deshaun Watson. The verdict is in. Aaron, you have the floor, sir.
Final verdict. It's by all accounts over at this point. There's no more appeal process. So we're at 11 games, $5 million fine, and Deshaun Watson has to go through a third party, I guess like therapy protocol basically set up by the league.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the only contingency for him on his reinstatement. So
jokes aside, is this kind of like Tiger Woods and what he did when he was going through his shit?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, when he slept with like 20 different women.
Yeah.
Then went to sex addict rehab.
I mean, it's certainly something that the NFL can point to and say, that we're not just finding somebody, but we're trying to
better them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
it's rehabilitation, right? The NFL is calling it therapy or counseling or whatever. At the end of the day, it's kind of a circle. It's
right.
Rehabilitation in some facet.
Right. I don't really have all the details on that part of it. I think, obviously the NFL was looking at a full season. Deshaun's camp was, set to, go with the 6 from Sue Robinson's report. We ended up at 11. There was a actual settlement that came out for it. So, because of that, it's hard. It is. I don't think there was any suspension that was going to come down that was going to appease everybody.
No.
I think the NFL chose to settle this because they certainly want to see this drag into court or even drag on any longer for that means. Deshaun Watson's going to be out of the public eye for a little while here. Kevin Stefanski's already said that he's not going to be playing in any more of the preseason games. Obviously, you want to get Jacoby Brissett to, go into that, with his, first team reps and everything like that. So, listen, man, we can talk about it from the off the field. We can talk about it from the on the field. I think it's probably appropriate to start with the off the field stuff first. Deshaun Watson in his press conference today again holds his no remorse, no accountability is disappointing to see. There was his interview with Aditi before the preseason game on Friday, where it was the first hint of Deshaun Watson taking some form of responsibility for what had happened. That basically now seems like something that the NFL forced him to do as part of this settlement, if you will, whether that's off the books or not. And Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Browns, has, countless times said Deshaun Watson has expressed his remorse, which is frankly bullshit. And the reason I say that is, by definition, remorse is that you are atoning for something that you are agreeing that you acknowledge that you did wrong, and maybe
Correct.
You can grow from it, or maybe you can learn something from it and become a better person by it. It was really, really, for lack of a better word, just kind of cringy to watch. I know Browns fans are probably excited to just have something. There's just been this really, really long, drawn out process of what's it going to be. Where are we going to land on this? And again, that's more on the field stuff. And I think we can get into that a little bit later, but what were your guys' initial thoughts on it?
Todd?
So I think looking at where we started with this at a 6-game suspension based on evidence presented to Judge Sue Robinson, and the way that hearing was recepted by the just outside of the NFL community, the football community and the social media community. I think the 11 games with the $5 million fine to Deshaun, plus the NFL matching the $1 million, Cleveland matching $1 million, and giving all of that to victims of sexual assault. They're calling it sexual victim awareness, whatever you want to call it. I'm certainly very interested to see what charitable foundation that goes to. I'm hoping that that's something that's disclosed when the time is right, is who this is benefiting. Because I think until you get the, I appreciate what the NFL is doing here, but I have I think maybe just because I'm cold to the world, I have my reservations on being like, here's $7 million for victims of sexual assault. It's like in The Office when he's like, this is for rabies, right? Like it just feels super vague right now. And I'm sure more details will come of it. But my initial reaction of the 11-game suspension is, I think justice is fair and swift here. I'm sure that there's people out there in the world that disagree and think that Deshaun Watson should be suspended for an entire year, if not longer. I think we've seen, people who are guilty of domestic violence be handed larger punishments. And again, there's documented evidence, physical evidence there that shows that. But I think with the way that things have situated with all of this, and the NFL jumping in, going through this first process of the hearings and going through the judge process, I think that this is about as good as you're going to get for all of this when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
I think the NFL did this correctly. I was really, really apprehensive that the NFL was not going to interject because of this new process. But then I also look at the other side and say, like, well, the NFL wants to show that what they agreed with the NFLPA is not as good as what they think it is, or it's not going to benefit them as much as they think it is. But it sounds like every side of this agrees. And I think it's time, if you're a Browns fan, you're just thinking forward. And I know we're going to get more into that, but that's where I kind of stand on this now is think forward and try to compartmentalize that the Browns play football and Deshaun Watson is not the Cleveland Browns, right? That's where I stand on this.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this result is final. So whether or not you like it, this is this is the decision that was made, and everybody's going to have to live with it. Do I agree with it? No. We were talking just before we got on here. We had a guy that got suspended an entire year for a $1,500 bet on himself, versus a guy that allegedly assaulted almost 30 women, only getting 11 games and a $5 million fine. So doesn't make a lot of sense. We've obviously spoken at it in length on here, about how this was, the betting and gambling was agreed to, in the NFLPA's, agreement, prior to all of that happening. So I understand why it's in fact just, logically doesn't make sense, but it is what it is. So Deshaun Watson is going to be starting his first game against the Texans, I believe, which is just hilarious. It's extremely ironic. I mean, let's kind of break this down a little bit. If a couple parts, if the Browns are rolling, does Watson come in?
Yes,
regardless.
100%. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It does not matter what the record is.
Yeah, there's. I think here's the thing. I'm going to say this, and I stand by it, and I hope Aaron agrees with me because I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. Even if the Browns are 10-0 going into Week 13 or 11-0 going into Week 13 against the Texans, Deshaun Watson starts that game.
You're right. I would have said the exact same thing.
It does not matter when you pay somebody a $230 million, all of it, every single penny of it, varied to the last drop. You are putting that person in a game. And here's the thing, and again, this is football. I'm not talking about Deshaun Watson, the person. I'm talking about Deshaun Watson, the football player. He has proven that when he is on the field, he is an absolute game changer at the quarterback position. He has the ability to change trajectory very quickly with his arm and his feet and his ability to read a defense. So,
Rob, thank you for swinging in, big dog.
You do not deprive yourself of that as an organization, regardless of who the person is off the field, right?
Yeah. No, 100%.
It is what it is.
No, you just kind of follow the money on that one, and 100%. And obviously, they're not going to be 11-0 going into that game, but the point still stands of the record is irrelevant. Jacoby Brissett can be playing out of his mind; it won't matter. He's going to be the de facto starter regardless of when he shows up. So, or regardless of the situation, we know when he's going to show up. So, yeah, I mean the stuff we heard around it prior to the ruling coming out was that the NFL wanted to avoid this in general. Was they didn't want the spectacle of Deshaun playing against the Texans. So it is ironic where that's going to be the first game that he plays. You would
right.
We said it before. The NFL wanted a full game. Obviously, Deshaun's camp wanted less. That's what this was. It was a settlement, and a settlement by definition is neither side is going to get exactly what they wanted.
Sure.
So obviously there is some concessions that have been made. So for people to say, the NFL is too lenient here, although I agree with that on face value, there's just so much more nuance to it than just, this is what the NFL has always done. And what Sue Robinson said in her report is the NFL just throws around suspensions without a care in the world or, really any kind of rhyme or reason. So I think that's something that you'll see coming out of this new process. Is maybe a little bit more consistency when it comes to these type of rulings. But we just don't know, because not only was this really the first time that we've seen it in action, it was one of the wildest, largest cases that the NFL has really had to take a look at from a player off the field perspective. Obviously, you mentioned the Calvin Ridley thing. Again, I agree with that on face value. It's just kind of apples and oranges to me.
Right.
Again, I don't think gambling is as big of a deal as sexual assault. But Calvin Ridley knew the rules, of what would happen if he was caught. And it's pretty easy to catch somebody on a mobile site, using your own phone.
and to follow what you always say, I'm going to cross-reference sports here. If history says anything, that when you gamble on your sport or on your team or on yourself, there are very large negative ramifications for yourself. Now, Major League Baseball, always throws the big hammer down in a circumstance where they're kind of made the fool, right? And even looking at the NBA with the referee's last name was Daugherty. I can't remember his first name right now, but
I know what you're talking about.
Being caught within that kind of that gambling, that money making scheme that he was in.
Tim Donaghy or something like that, I think it was.
Tim Donaghy, thank you. Or Daugherty, something like that. But, I mean, he ended up going to prison. I mean, which is an extreme example because he was a part of something much greater. But history tells you that when money is involved, that's not legal money. And as a professional athlete, you sign the contract that you're not going to bet on yourself. And when you break that rule, there's a punishment for that. So that's a 10 commandment rule for professional athletes. You never bet on yourself.
Not to mention, and I hate to say it this way because it's unfortunate, but a lot easier to prove.
For sure.
In terms of that's completely black and white.
Yeah, for Calvin Ridley, there was an IP trail that came right back to his cell phone.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, again, on face value, it is a little bit ridiculous, but at the same time, what the NFL, we were just saying, follow the money, right? The NFL is going to make a killing on sports gambling. The second that illegitimacy of the league gets brought into question, and you're going to be compared to pro wrestling, right? Where it was the same thing that happened into the NBA. Where that once that legitimacy gets brought into question, it kind of crumbles your whole league, and it's why everyone is like, oh, the refs are paid, like the NFL, all professional sports leagues do a huge, not outreach, but they make a huge point to obviously discredit those type of things because you don't want the legitimacy of your league brought into question. Now, is the NFL going to say that they care more about sexual assault against women? Yeah, they're going to say that. But I think we all know how the NFL practices, and I don't believe that. So, that's kind of what we're seeing right now in practice. So again, the NFL can say everything that they want, but that is what it is. And I know sports gambling is legal now, but it's completely different when it's players, GMs, coaches that are involved in that. So
that's a whole different bundle of fruit you're talking about.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's a whole other can of worms, baby.
Yeah. So, I mean, from, like we were just saying there, so, I mean, from a football perspective, the Browns are going to be able to get to see their franchise quarterback this year. They have a pretty soft schedule to open the season, but then I believe it's like the 8 or 9 games prior to him coming back, is an absolute gauntlet of, teams like, the Bills, the Chargers, Buccaneers. There's a lot of teams in there, obviously the Bengals and the Ravens. Those are going to be some pretty tough games.
Right. Marcus, what's up, man?
What's up to Marcus? How you doing, buddy? Thanks for stopping in.
Let's go. Yeah, I mean, so the Browns have a good roster this year. The AFC is completely stacked. I kind of saw the sentiment online this year that it's like, all right, well, the season's a wash. I don't believe that, but it's certainly an extreme uphill climb for them to even be in that conversation. But if you're watching CBS on Sunday at 1:00 and the graphic pops up the week before Deshaun comes back and you see the Browns there in the hunt, that's the goal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
that's very well said.
Yeah, if the Browns can at least just stay in it until he comes back, they're gonna be a tough team to beat in the back half, especially with Deshaun being 100% fresh. The only thing that I would question is he going to be able to slide right in and be impactful in that first game, or is he going to need a couple games to get up to speed? That's what I'm really going to be most interested to see.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's interesting. So you're going to have week 1 Browns versus Baker. You're going to have week 1 Russell Wilson versus Seahawks, and you're going to have Deshaun Watson versus the Texans.
So I think I know we talked about it being ironic. I think this is more coincidental, the situation that's kind of come together here. But I just think it's so funny that the game that he comes back is against the team that probably gets the number 1 overall pick next year. And it just so happens to be the team that he formerly played for. But it's going to be an absolute dumpster fire of a game, right? There's going to be all of this speculation, this tumbleweed is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then Deshaun Watson's going to get into this game, and this is my bold projection. He's going to turn into an absolute fucking animal in Houston and just unleash the fury, and then he's going to walk into Cincinnati with the same mentality and get his teeth kicked in. That's my projection, but I think it's call it intentional, unintentional by the NFL, but I don't think it was you don't just bring a guy because are they on a bye week 12? Is that where this comes in? Or?
Yeah, it's I think it's 2 weeks prior to that. So it's 11 games. So it's week 13. So it's the first game in December.
Okay, so I just think that
every game or a home game.
So that's in Houston.
So everything that here's the thing, at the end of the day, everything that the NFL does is 110% intentional. And it just so happens that they play at Houston, they play at Cincinnati. Oh, and then by the way, they play in Cleveland against the Ravens. Yeah. Right. So you're getting in, like you said, you're getting into the meat and potatoes of the Browns schedule where things start ramping up a little bit. And then you get the welcome back to Houston, Deshaun, after your suspension. Oh, let me play the other two best teams in the AFC North right after that. So everything is a meticulous game in the business of the NFL. But I think it's the juice is a little bit sweeter if he gets a week to go into Houston, then he gets to go play in Cincinnati. That's just the way that I see it.
Yeah, the interesting thing is their last 6 games are at Houston, at Cincy, home Ravens, home Saints, at Washington, and then at Pittsburgh for the last game of the year.
So 4 of those games are going to be tough.
I mean, yeah, but the way I look at it is, again, if you're in the hunt,
5.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you can reasonably. I mean, obviously, I don't think they're going to run the table there. But if Deshaun can come back and be the quarterback that we've seen him, 5-1, 4-2 is not off the table there. Although that would be, insane to do. Todd, I heard your prediction there. It's kind of hard. It's just really hard to say right now before games. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. What if the Browns are, have a rash of injuries even going into that Houston game, and it really doesn't matter at that point.
Yeah, I'm speaking perfect world scenario for Cleveland, right? And if history says anything, and how this preseason is starting, is that injuries are going to become a very prominent thing during this season. And I know it's something that we're going to touch on at some point in time during the podcast tonight. But when I give that projection, that is perfect world. Everything kind of lines up for.
No, I get you.
Deshaun and the Cleveland Browns, as you say, because I think that realistically going into week 13, there's a chance that they could win 7 games by that point in time, right? Or even 8. So it's not out of the realm to see a really tight race in the AFC North, even without Deshaun Watson on the field for the first 2/3 of the season. So
sure, but for teams like the Bengals, Ravens, and maybe potentially the Saints, and of course the Steelers are always in it as well. When you're those teams looking at it, you don't want to. You'd rather play the Browns at less than full strength, of course, right? So for those teams getting into the stretch run here, I'm sure they were all hoping to see a full season as opposed to having to play Deshaun. So obviously the Ravens, the Bengals, and the Steelers will all get a game against Deshaun and without. So
yep. And again, I think you've said it correctly. You're going to watch a really tight race in the AFC North, I think, regardless of Deshaun being on the field at the beginning of the season or not. So you're right. I think for teams like the Bengals and the Ravens, specifically based on where my projections were last Thursday or last Wednesday, I think that they are concerned that they're kind of the latter third where they're trying to make their final push. They're going to have to face a guy that's going to have the freshest legs on the field, right? By a long shot. And say what you will about the guy, he's 26 years old. He's got a lot of time left in those legs. And if the 21st century quarterback tells me anything, is that they can play till they're 45 years old. So there's a lot of time left in Deshaun Watson's body, and he's when all of these things kind of unfolded, he was still going up on the hill, and we hadn't even seen him hit the peak of the mountain yet. So
betting odds, he was always a top 3-5 for MVP. So
yes. Right.
And again, there's probably going to be some rust involved. We saw it in the first preseason game against the Jaguars. Again, me and Todd talked about this last night. I'm not concerned about that at all, just because you certainly don't have all your starters out there. You kind of just want them to get out there and play professional football again. I do find it a little interesting that they're shutting him down for the preseason, but I also kind of get it because now that when he's going to come back, you don't want, God forbid he, even though I know there's a ton of people out there that would be totally fine to see this happen. He just blows out his Achilles or MCL, ACL. That's full season anyway, right? So, you're at least giving yourself the opportunity to take a look at him later in the year, see how he fits in, see how he gels. Again, we know how talented this guy is on the field. My disappointment lies in his just any time that this guy gets in front of a microphone, I just put my head in my hands, because as a fan, I'm sitting here like, again, take all of the shit away, which again, I know is really, really hard to do. I'm looking at this today as, okay, and I've said it on here before, I just want to talk about football, right? We've been on here for about 25 minutes and we're talking about sexual assault, and frankly, we're three white guys who, probably aren't the ambassadors of this topic, but because this is such a prevalent topic in football, we can't not talk about it. It's certainly the biggest story of the day, is the biggest story of the year. So again, it's unavoidable, but at the same time, as a fan of football, and why I love podcasting with you guys and doing this, is so we can talk X's and O's, so we can talk sports, so we can talk professional football. I can talk from my fanhood perspective. And, today is really the first time that I can actually do that with a little bit of certainty.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as a Browns fan, right? You've literally been sitting.
It's been a tough offseason for you. It's been a tough year.
Right? Yeah, I mean, you watch things unravel last year in Cleveland. I mean, that's what happened, right? The season just kind of unraveled with a ton of injuries and just really unfortunate circumstances, really in the second half of the season, and then you see a guy like Baker. I'm bringing up Baker again. We always fucking talk about Baker Mayfield, but you see a guy like Baker who Cleveland kind of just loses the faith in, and then the story turns into like, oh, does Cleveland hate Baker? Well, it's not like, what are the Browns doing to get better? So I think you're right. So this whole offseason as a Browns fan has not been about what are the Browns doing to be AFC North champions. There's been this huge fucking enormous black cloud of social media shit that's just been raining turds of anger all over the Cleveland community. And I can't say that as a Cincinnati sports fan that I've ever been in that circumstance where there's been this much negative media attention. But for you specifically and other Cleveland sports fans, I feel a lot of sympathy for you. Yeah. And it's not pity sympathy, right? It's not a woe is me sympathy. There's a lot of people out there that just want to watch the Browns play football. They just want to watch football, and they want to watch Cleveland win, and they want to see him win a playoff game. They want to see him get to a Super Bowl. They want to see him fucking win a Super Bowl. But there's always there's always the asterisk that happens, or there's always the caveat that just slips right in when things are kind of on the up and up, and then there's the shit kind of just opens up. The earth opens up, and they signed Deshaun Watson. Where's the uncertainty? How can Cleveland do this thing? Well, the Browns did something to win. You sign a guy like Deshaun Watson for his on the field performance, his track record as a quarterback in the NFL. When you make that signing, you know that you're dealing with the shit off the field. And Jimmy Haslam has been very, I would say, as transparent as an owner of an NFL franchise can be about where they've kind of fell through this whole entire situation. Right. And I know we're going to talk about the interviews today here in a little bit, but there's only so much damage control that you can do, because facts are facts, allegations are allegations. And I'm not putting the two together because they're two separate things, but when all of these things just keep popping up and there's still people that are constantly trolling the internet, continuously bringing this up, you don't get to watch football. You don't get to enjoy being a Browns fan. You just sit. It's almost like wearing the dunce cap in the corner of the classroom, because you just can't be a Browns fan without somebody mocking you for something, right? Yeah. I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of what it's been.
You're right. It's I mean, unless you're in Cleveland, like I've heard a lot of Cleveland fans that are transplants elsewhere, they're like, I'm not going to wear my Browns gear around just because I just don't want to deal with that. And the Browns are not have been shit on by from a fans based perspective for a long time. It's just not for this, right? It was more the lovable loser than it was, the evil empire, if you will. So it's a completely different perspective of, getting shit on by other NFL fan bases, but
it's not even just NFL fan bases,
right.
dude. It's the whole fucking world right now.
I know.
and I know that's where my sympathy comes from. Right?
Yeah, because we're fans, right? We're fans of sports, and I don't want to get lost, the people's lives that were actually affected by this. And I know that wasn't, your point at all. Like me as a fan, I'm not really going through shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
right.
it is what it is. And obviously, again, we're a sports podcast. We're going to talk about sports, and that's what we're doing right now. But I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention that piece of it because it sucks, but let's face it, it's not that bad.
Sure. I think I just see it as like I haven't lived in my lifetime without some mocking involved, and from my side too, being a Bengals fan for a long time, there's a lot of mocking involved, and it's hard to stand by a team when there's constant mockery, but it's kind of embedded in you. Yeah. And you're right. I don't want to take anything away from the circumstances that we're in. We're talking about the sports side of this. I don't have my humanitarian hat on right now. Right. I'm talking about, we're three guys who don't know it, who aren't a part of the situation that are talking about sports. So it's hard to as a sports fan to watch another group of sports fans not be able to just do the normal things that you're supposed to do for your team. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Yeah. It's hard to watch
100%.
that.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that being said, I know you had just alluded to it, the press conferences today. Let's get into it a little bit. I know that you basically said that it was very cringeworthy, but was there anything in there that, you want to talk about or break down that you heard?
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Haslam's just kind of trying to, I don't know, like have his cake and eat it too, right? Where he's like, we understand that this is, a big deal. I mean, the biggest thing to me was Deshaun Watson saying, I know that my actions triggered a group of people.
Right.
And that to me was just such a fucking slap in the face to everything that just happened. He basically finally found out what his punishment is going to be. And now he's reverting back to, exactly who he's always been. And that's the really, really frustrating part. I think as fans, I think it would be a lot easier for us if as half-assed as it was, the apology that he put out on Friday, if he had done something similar to that tune in his press conference today, I think a lot of fans would have been able to stomach it a little bit easier of, all right, we got the punishment. This isn't going to happen again. He's expressed some form of remorse. But we're just not getting that. And that's the part to me as a fan that is the hardest to overcome because we've all rooted for players that are absolute pieces of shit off the field. Right. But it does become a little bit easier, obviously, as we've seen as time moves on, but we're still kind of in the middle of it. So for him to just kind of brush that off, like, and Jimmy Haslam today was like annoyed by these questions. And it's like, dude, you made this move. This is to be expected. It was an absolute PR nightmare. They would have been better off saying nothing and going, this is now final. We yield to the NFL's statement. We agree with everything in there. We're going to focus now that we know what's going on the players that are here in football. Next question would have been a terrible way to do it, but better. It was a train wreck to hear. And again, I said it when Deshaun had his introductory press conference. He just really does not come across well at all. He's not a very good speaker, in my opinion, just from like a public speaking perspective. And you're always used to your franchise star quarterback being the guy who is, who is good at that. That's his role. You know what I mean?
Brett Favre and Wrangler jean commercials.
Yeah,
right?
and I'm not saying a captain of a team needs to be that. We have like a Myles Garrett on this team that can be a vocal mouthpiece for the team. It doesn't always have to be your starting quarterback. Like I think of like Kirk Cousins, for instance. Like I don't think he's a rallying cry type of guy that is going to, juice up the team, but he at least goes out there and plays his game. And, he again, he's not the best quarterback in the league, but,
Right.
but he just goes out there and plays his game. For
Sure.
Deshaun and Jimmy Haslam to act, in my opinion, frankly annoyed at these questions today it was just insulting to all of it that has happened up until this point. We're going to move on from here.
Just icing on the cake at this point.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like there really wasn't a worse way to go about it. I think silence would have been a better move.
So I want you guys to walk through with me here on this journey of the 11-minute press conference that Deshaun Watson had, because that's what I want to focus on.
All right.
If I give you guys the name Elizabeth Holmes, does that ring a bell with either of you?
Tom Cruise's ex-wife?
No, that's
Katie Holmes.
It's Katie.
Katie Holmes. I'm sorry.
Okay, so
no, it does not.
So early in our professional careers, because we're all the same age, there was a company that came into existence in Silicon Valley.
Oh! I know who you're talking about.
Theranos,
Yeah.
Right? So it was called Theranos. Theranos' idea or their product was the ability to provide a blood test and give immediate readings to the blood test. And rather than blood tests being sent to DNA labs and waiting for results and things being too late, the idea is that you get this test, it's immediate gratification. You can stop disease or terminal, or let's call it terminal illness is the term that they used, before it even affects your body in the long term, right? And the creator of this product, her name was Elizabeth Holmes. She's a young college dropout from Stanford, super introverted, extremely intelligent to the point where she didn't read social cues well. She was not good at the early stages of social interaction until later she was coached into the Theranos thing, and people had bought into this business that hadn't even created a real product yet and was worth billions of dollars. And she became this very rich and successful young businesswoman who was the model for young women in business. And she provided this message of, there's always going to be people stopping you along the way. You're going to do this, you're going to do that. But then when it came out that what Theranos was doing wasn't real, it was all false. They weren't using, their claim was that they had this equipment that did these tests. It wasn't their equipment. They were using equipment from other companies and putting their sticker on it, right? It's like saying you drive a Ford and you just put a Ford sticker over the Chevy bow tie. That's basically what they were doing with their product. And then Elizabeth Holmes, rather than what everybody advised her to do, which was not go on the national media and do interviews, she went on an interview with USA Today and continuously said, I'm devastated. I'm devastated by what's happening. I'm devastated for the people. She just used that term over and over and over because she didn't feel any real
emotion
to the situation. She was just trying to cover her ass through all of this. So my direct comparison from my very long spiel here is that I watched Deshaun Watson today say over and over again, I just need to move forward in my career. I need to move forward in my career as a football player. I need to do this for my career. I need to do this as a football player. And he sometimes threw in the Cleveland Browns. He occasionally threw in his teammates, right, or the coaching staff. And it was so disingenuous that it was to me, like, it was uncomfortable for me to watch the whole thing, right? Like it was, I don't want to use the term cringy, but I sat here on my couch when I got done watching it, and I was like, it's bad. It's much worse now, right? And the questions that the media was asking him are the questions that they're going to ask no matter what. And a lot of times when you're in the sinking ship, kind of like he is, even though things are finite now, you learn a way to kind of skate around the answer.
Yeah, who's not coaching this guy and saying, here are the questions that are you're going to be asked. So here's your answer.
That's my long-winded conversation to myself is kind of ending there. Why the fuck did nobody from the Cleveland Browns coach him on how to have this interview? Why did he get up in front of 50 people and 35 microphones and fall on his face time after time after time? Why was he not prepared for this? And look, if his character sucks, his character sucks, right? It is what it is. And Aaron's right. He, even before all of this, he's not a good speaker. If you watched him at Clemson after they won the national championship, he was horrible in post-game press conferences. He's not eloquent. That's not what you're paying him to do. You're paying him to win football games.
Right.
But for Jesus Christ, teach the guy how to fucking navigate a really, really hard press conference.
Yeah.
Well, if it was the same people that were in charge of naming the Cleveland Guardians, then, we all know why.
Hey, well, what's wrong with the Guardians?
Well, I mean, it was a men's roller league, derby roller league team name that they had to end up purchasing.
Yeah, it was. Because Guardians at least has like a tie. I hate when teams like the Steelers, right? That name absolutely makes sense for the town, right? Steel industry. I love when team names actually have a tie to the actual city itself. So for the Guardians, it's the Guardians of Transportation Bridge, which is across the street from the stadium, which looks dope, by the way. My problem with this is completely neither here nor there, but like for people outside of Cleveland, I understand that name probably doesn't mean a lot, but it actually does have a lot of ties to the city here.
Sure.
I was just cracking a joke at the media team.
But don't you check that a domain name is available before you publish a website?
Yeah, it was available. That's why it's an MLB team. Yeah, there was a roller derby team that had the name. My fucking rec basketball team could have been called the Guardians. I'm not going to claim ownership over it.
All I'm saying is this: you cross your T's and you dot your I's before you do something of that scale, and you get Tom Hanks involved. That's all I'm saying.
I'm sure that the $1 billion company had no idea that something like this would happen, and we're just like, all right, here's $10,000 and go away.
I just imagine there's one guy that was sitting in the corner of the boardroom.
Just like,
that they're like, Jeff said that he was going to check the Guardians.com was available, and he's just sitting there, and it's some Gen Zer who's fresh out of college, has a degree in business administration, who's wearing fucking Lululemon pants and tennis shoes to a meeting where people are in suit and ties, just on his MacBook, just typing away like, oh shit, that was on me, my bad. And then he just keeps going on. That's where I think this is funny. You're absolutely right. Nobody gives a fuck about a roller derby team. I understand what the importance is to the name Guardians. I mean, when you have when you have a bridge dedicated to the name itself, right? Or the team is dedicated to the bridge. I understand all of that. I just think it's really funny that this is a part of the Cleveland thing. Like, here's this thing that's coming unfurled that all of a sudden this roller derby team that's been just disbanded for a decade, all of a sudden it's like, hey, that's my username.
Disbanded, right? It's like the guy who holds on to the domain name to cash in on it. It's not the deal. Or the Twitter handle.
Yeah, it's also the same guy that's in the subreddit threads talking shit about the Guardians and the Cavs and the fucking Browns. It's the same guy. That's where I think this is funny. I know. I knew that was going to trigger a sore subject, but like
that one, I'm not going to stand by. I'll agree with you that Deshaun Watson is a complete trash human being. I'll agree with that up and down. We were named the fucking Indians, bro. Okay, we changed it.
Look, I hear you. I went to a college at one point in time that was called the Redskins. I hear you.
I always thought it'd been hilarious if they
we're the Red Hawks.
I really wish the Redskins just leaned into it and were like, our logo is now a baked potato.
And it's just a really nice bowl of like garlic butter
of Redskin potatoes.
Yeah.
I don't know why they just didn't change their name to the Pigskins.
Be great.
I mean, they have people like literally in pig hats.
Yeah, that would have been a good one too.
But the thing is that the high school that is still in the same city as Miami, their team name is the Braves. And then the high school that Bobby and I went to, the team name is the Indians. Right. So like it's we grew into the culture together.
It just reminds me of the South Park episode where Randy goes against Columbus.
Yes.
And he's just like, is this Bill from Columbus, Ohio? You racist piece of shit.
Yes. I always think of anytime we get into like the Commander Washington football team, that's always what I think of. Is this Bill? Is this Bill from Columbus?
Fucking racist.
Yeah, you fucking racist, Bill.
Yeah.
So Corey, we miss you too, brother. Hope you're having a wonderful time in Chicago.
Did you have some Malort yet?
Yeah.
If you leave Chicago without having Malort, I will disown you as a person. Yeah. So Have some
I think
Malort.
I think he has had some Malort because he used our high school go-to cheer in the chat here. So he's either had plenty of old styles or at least one or two Malort.
INDIANS. Indians are the very best. IND. Woo!
It's terrible. Great job, guys.
You're looking at 3 pieces of back-to-back Super Bowl Pee Wee football champs, Aaron. I'm sorry, you're in the presence of greatness.
Yeah, I was rocking my Lakewood basketball champs shirt last night, so I'm sorry.
I saw that.
I should have worn it again tonight. I'm going to hang it up right here.
Throw it in the rafters.
Throw it in the rafters right over the pod studio. Okay, so we've gone off on a little bit of a tangent here, so we can try to.
All right, I have one more question. I've been to Chicago
please.
like 6 times. What is Malort?
It is okay.
You haven't had it either?
No.
Oh.
So,
dude, I've never heard of it. I've been.
So I was in Chicago. I hadn't either. So I'm not going to be one of those people that learned about something 2 days ago and is like, "Oh, you don't know about this, you piece of shit." And everyone knows that person that they Googled something 2 days ago and then they're an expert on it. So
wait, how did you not know about that?
I went to a bachelor party in Chicago 2 weeks ago. I didn't know what Malort was either. We're at a bar waiting for everybody else to get in. My buddy Nolan asked me, "Is like, hey, do you know what Malort is?" And I thought this was going to be some like 2 girls, 1 cup shit. Or I'm like, no, but I'm not looking it up, you fucking weirdo. Right. And as the bartender is right there when he asked me the question, and the bartender starts laughing. That's why I thought it was some weird fucking thing. And then the bartender walks away and I go, no, what the fuck is that? But also the bartender just laughed. And now I feel completely out of the loop. You have to tell me what this is. And then the bartender comes back. Malort is a liquor that is known in Chicago that he told me the story about it. It's the only liquor that made it through Prohibition, as in didn't.
Oh, wow.
Because there was a doctor who they like prescribed it as like medicinal. But he smoked so many cigars that he couldn't taste regular liquor. So there was this liquor called Malort, and Todd, you know what I'm talking about because you've had it. It just tastes like you're licking the bottom of an ashtray. It is. So it's got taste.
Yeah. So imagine.
That doesn't sound good.
No, it's bad.
Imagine someone put Old Bond water in a beer bottle and you accidentally took a sip of that beer bottle because you have to.
So here's the thing. This
made my eyes water.
So I was in Wrigleyville, and I'm at a bar in Wrigleyville, and so I'm watching a Reds game. I had just seen a Reds game at Wrigley Field. I go to this bar. There's guys that are in Reds gear, and of course, as an out of towner, you congeal to those people, right? You go to the people you know you're comfortable with, and these guys are all talking about it. And I'm in my early 20s, and these guys are in like their low to mid 40s. That's what I would guess. Or they're in their 30s and they had smoked more Marlboro Reds than I could have ever thought of. But they're all giddy about trying Malort at this bar, right? And they're kind of like chumming it up with me, like, "Oh, where are you from? Blah blah blah." And they're like, "Do you want a shot of this?" And I'm like, "Sure."
Yeah,
like I don't know.
Line them up.
Yeah.
No, so like, this is a shot. It's not like you don't drink it neat. It's not over rocks. You just shoot it.
You shoot.
I hope it's only a shot, because if somebody is drinking this shit neat, their taste buds are absolutely fucked to the 100 million.
Smoking cigars like Winston Churchill.
So I think everybody goes back to the first time they took a shot of liquor, and you have that your body's reaction is to just spit it out.
Reject it.
You reject everything. When I took this shot of Malort, it went into my brain, back down into my body, and then up to my nose, and then it went down my throat. Like it took me the better part of 2 minutes to recover from that shot. And again, this was like peak drinking, Todd, where I could hammer out lots of beers in a night and then go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning. And this shot did me completely in for the rest of the night, where my beer tasted bad for 20 minutes afterwards. And I don't know if you had a similar experience here, but the aftertaste of Malort is so potent that I could taste it in my teeth if I touched the back of my teeth.
So that's where I had it too, was in Wrigleyville. Do you remember the bar you were at? Did they have the Malort distilling in baseballs?
No. So the bar that I went to is the bar that has the batting cage in it.
Okay, different one. So the one I was at is like the oldest bar in Wrigleyville.
It's the one across. It's across the street from Wrigley Field.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
yeah.
I think that's the Cubby Bear. But either way.
So I'm thinking. I thought
Wrigleyville's like a neighborhood. It's not necessarily. Yeah. But either way, it doesn't matter.
I mean, I've been there.
So here's the thing, Bobby. Like what we're doing, we're not selling it. That's for sure. This drink doesn't need to be sold because if I did a shot of vodka or I did a shot of bourbon or I did something like that, we would not be talking about this right now. It is, that doesn't taste good either. It is an experience that you need to have.
Okay.
And it's something that you need to preferably not do alone. There was one guy whose flight unfortunately got delayed for the bachelor party, so he was only able to be there Saturday. And we had all done the shot Friday night. And we ordered him a shot at the bar Saturday and made him do it on his own because we're like, there's not a single chance that you're going to be the only person here that doesn't know what we're talking about. And he was furious at us. But it's an experience. It's something so uniquely Chicago that you just have to do it.
So I don't know if you I mean, you're on a bachelor party, maybe you did, but when I took this shot, the bartender at this bar was like, "Don't worry about it. Don't." Like I tried to throw him a 10. He was like, "Don't worry about it." So
he's like, "No, you've paid your tab. You've
proven
awesome. You're a man." And then I ordered like 10 Coors Lights for the table. So
yeah. So I made a commitment to myself when I was in Chicago that I was only going to drink old styles when I was at the bars in Chicago and at a Cubs game. And an old style is a Bud Light and I would say it's closer to like a Keystone, but it's as easy to drink as a Miller Lite, right? You have one at a Cubs game, and the next thing you know, you got a stack of 8 cups in front of you.
Yeah, and old styles are good.
And you're yelling at Chris Bryant and left center and on the third baseline because he's 2 years younger than you. That's where I ended up that night, right? and I think that when you and Bobby, maybe we'll have to figure out a way to make this happen where maybe we make a trip to Chicago because I would really, really like to be there. And I'm going on record right now because this is forever in the world. I will take another shot of it with you so you can experience it. I'm willing to go down that rabbit hole.
I'm in on that. Or I'm thinking a rally towel remote.
Oh shit. Let's do it. Let's do it. If you can find Malort in Cleveland, let me know.
You might. I mean, you can I'm sure you can order it. I'm sure you can whatever. But it is.
I keep thinking about it. You get like the how you start salivating a little bit. That's what I'm doing that right now.
Quite literally,
I think of like Jaeger.
It's like a gold. Like it looks like gold tequila almost. But it's like it looks thin. Like it's got this really weird color to it. And honestly, the closest thing I can compare it to, color and taste wise, gasoline.
Yeah.
So 151. Got it.
No, 151 is you can. Here's the thing: you mix. I haven't tried, but I got a feeling you can mix Malort with just about anything outside of like piss, and you're gonna taste Malort. Yeah,
there's so many initial flavors that hit your palate that you kind of have the trip of like. You relive your whole entire life for 3 seconds of this shot being in your mouth, right? Like you think about all the things that you did wrong, and then you're like, swallow it. Boop, boop. All right, we're fine. Everybody's good.
You do not even give that a chance to park in your mouth. That is straight. No. That is straight down the hatch.
And you, at least for me, like the bartender was like, if I could describe like this close to my face, right? Here's the camera to me. Is watching me and these 3 other complete strangers to me do this shot, and then just starts uncontrollably laughing because when they pull Malort out, they're pulling it out from the bottom shelf for the fucking out of towners that are like, oh, the Chicago, let's do the shot, and then they're like fucking idiots, and they're just pouring it for everybody.
The bar I was at had like 50 bottles. On the shelf, like under lights. It's like a thing. It is a thing, and it's something that you absolutely have to do.
Yeah.
But also,
let's do it.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it.
Yeah. Let's table it, and let's do it for some. We'll have to figure out a way to do it where we can somehow get the 4 of us with spouses to Chicago for a couple days.
That sounds good.
Yeah, that'd be a good getaway for sure. I love Chicago. It's like my favorite place to travel.
It's the capital of the Midwest.
Yeah,
it's awesome. There's nothing better than
It's got a great Midwest feel
There's
to it.
nothing better than some Malnati's going to Wrigley.
The Riverwalk.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It's phenomenal.
Beautiful
The
town.
House of Blues is
We
great
did
too.
a,
if
we
you've
did
ever
a
been there.
booze cruise while we were there. It was
Ooh.
great. Oh yeah. So good. And it's great. And there's so much shit to do, and it's all easily accessible by the L train, which is great.
Awesome.
I am a big fan of Chicago.
All right, let's table it. It's documented. Corey, when you watch this again, when you're not drinking dozens of old styles, remember this moment.
I also want, Corey, if you're still listening, I need you to take a video of you doing this shot.
Yeah,
because I need to see your facial expressions.
I have a feeling he's going to take that and not make much of a face.
I can do shots just fine. This was an out of body experience.
Okay. I think it's solely based on we watched Corey shotgun a beer and fat. I mean,
this ain't no beer.
I can't even put a sock on as fast as Corey took that shot.
Very
you know
true.
what I mean? But I think when somebody does that you just automatically respect everything they do with alcohol, right? I think there's like an unspoken thing where you're like, this guy beats me in every drinking game. He probably drinks more than me, and then you never challenge him ever again. Right. That's where Bobby and I were after watching that video of Corey. Like, oh shit,
it's pretty depressing.
Because I was getting ready to talk some shit, and I'm like, I can't do that.
I can't do the shotgun, but I can chug a beer quickly, like especially out of a glass. It is the shotgunning I am not great at.
Yeah, I mean, I can kill it out of a bottle in maybe 3 seconds, but the shotgun, I don't know.
Here's what I imagine.
I've learned that I'm not good at it.
Is the four of us in Chicago? They're like, all right, I need a beer in a glass. I need 2 cans, 4 shots of Malort.
Please don't open the can.
Yeah, don't open it. I got my keys, and don't worry about it. And then it's like, all right, you chug that beer. We're gonna shotgun these beers,
yeah,
and we're going to take shots of Malort afterward.
So can I get a bucket?
Yeah.
You're like, absolutely not.
Shit.
Absolutely not.
No, take it.
Brian, what's up, baby? Better late than never. Thanks for swinging through.
Let's go, Brian.
Brian, what's up, dude? Just a bunch of 30-year-olds talking about how they could still hang with the 20-year-olds. That's what I gathered from all that.
I know I can't. I can liven up for a weekend, but then Monday and Tuesday
I'm dead for a week.
I'm not going to look at anybody in the eyes.
Oh shit.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, let's get back on track here a little bit. So we've obviously covered the big portion, which was Deshaun and the Browns. So I know we're all tired of talking about that. The NFL,
not me, dude. I'm just kidding.
Bro, I'm here for it.
Yeah. No. Let's move on.
So there has been quite a few injuries in the NFL preseason. Some notable ones. We had Mekhi Becton of the Jets. He's expected to miss the entire season after yet another knee injury. Jason Kelsey's out indefinitely after getting scope on his elbow. Just all kinds of stuff. What is any injuries that's kind of stuck out to you guys? And what's going to be, how's the season going to play out based off of those injuries?
Before we get into that, let's do a PSA for loyal follower Brian. Brian's trying to find somebody to go to Luke Bryan concert with tomorrow. If anybody's watching, you know what? I think he's in Tennessee now. So he's a Dayton guy. So gotcha. Brian and I met because I worked for CarMax and we had our own car auction, and Brian was our guy that bought all the stuff that didn't run, because the man is a wizard of a mechanic. He can get any car that doesn't start to start. And we developed a really good relationship from that. So yeah, he's in Knoxville. So anybody in the look, we need to reach out to our boys at Second and Victory.
I was just going to say Second and Victory. Yeah.
We'll reach out to Hubie. He's down there. I think he might even be in Knoxville. But Brian, I've seen Luke Bryan in concert. A lot of people will give some hard times for Luke Bryan. He puts on a good show live.
He does.
He plays for a long time, which is good. because when you pay that money for a ticket to go see somebody, you want to make sure they're playing for at least 2 hours, and he'll give you a 2-hour show. And I'm not a country music guy.
I'm just not a country guy. I couldn't.
Yeah.
But
No.
I can appreciate somebody who plays the duration of a show and then comes out for an encore and actually gives you some good shit, and which he does.
Yeah. I mean, he's stadium country, but he puts on a good live performance. Did we go to that concert together?
We did, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
God.
that was 6 years ago. This year. 6 years ago this year.
Whew. God, time's flying.
You guys are old.
You got floor seats to that. Here's what Brian is. Brian married? Has Brian got a wife?
No wife.
Brian, here's what you do. You go to the bar tonight.
Brian is
go to the bar tonight. You walk in, you find the baddest chick in there and be like, "Hey, look, I got ditched. I got an extra floor seat to Luke Bryan tomorrow. Do you want to go?"
Here's the thing about Brian. Though. You got to understand is that Brian is a single dad of 3 girls. So the world is completely different for him than that.
I don't know. You take a Luke Bryant ticket, put it between your zipper, and I think you're walking out with a date.
And maybe a potential stepmom.
There you go.
He's a good dude. Can't hate Brian. It's all it's all love in here, but it's I hope you find somebody to go with you to that concert.
No, that was at Riverbend.
It was at Riverbend,
the
actually.
one we went to was Riverbend.
Yeah. It was just yeah. These are the general admission seats that all the drunk fucks like Bobby and I have to stand in so we can pee in the turf.
Smart.
Oh,
yeah.
It's gross.
Which ones is that where they do Bunbury at?
No,
because I've been there. I've been to Bunbury.
That's Sawyer Point. That's downtown. Riverbend.
Okay.
On the river on the southeast side. It's a great outdoor venue. I've seen a lot of concerts there. I saw 311 there. The highest I've ever been in my entire life was at this 311 concert, and I smoked.
That tracks.
I smoked no joints.
Yeah, just being there.
Just going into it, I didn't. But before I even walked in, the amount of weed that's around you creates such a beautiful body buzz that you don't need it until you get in, and then it's just like a rotation. It's like a 40,000 person rotation of joints. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure at 311 concerts the cops are just handing out joints. I'm not sure. I'd have to check into that. But yeah, no, I'm a big concert guy. So Bobby, you were asking about the injuries.
Yeah. What up, Amanda? Welcome to the show. Let's go.
Amanda, thanks for tapping Brian for us. Appreciate that.
It's just the unfortunate part of preseason, right? And me and Todd were on last night talking. I was doing a review of the Browns game, and the one that sticks out to me just.
Oh, we lost Aaron. Right as he was getting into the meat and potatoes of what he was getting ready to talk about. There he is. He's back.
I don't know what happened. So the Browns lost Nick Harris, their starting center for the whole year after the second play of a preseason game. We've seen obviously the Buccaneers center go down. You just mentioned, obviously Becton with the Jets, and it's the unfortunate, sad reality of preseason and the unfortunate business of the NFL that season-ending injuries can happen at any time. Now, to lose somebody before actual meaningful play or before meaningful games have even happened is just demoralizing. Yeah. It's really, really hard to go through that. So I feel for all of those guys. And so for someone like Nick Harris with the Browns, we've had JC Treader the last 2 years. We drafted Nick Harris 2 years ago, and it was, this was part of the plan where Nick Harris was going to step in and take over that role once we got rid of Treader. So, he has been waiting in the wings. He's played admirably as a backup, even stepped in and played some guard when needed. And, he was finally getting his shot, to be a good center in this league. And he, by all accounts, was going to be a good center in this league.
Yep.
And boom, you're done. We'll see you next year, put him in bubble wrap. And, what do you do from there? This is post most free agency. There really aren't a lot of guys that can just come in. The only thing about losing a guy now is this is before cut down days. There will most likely be some players available that you're not even thinking about right now. Maybe for, that can fill a right tackle role for Becton or, center role for some of the other teams that we've seen go down. But at the same time, now they're a little bit more valuable.
Yeah, so even from the Cincinnati side, we watched some depth kind of fall out today. So Jackson Carman doesn't participate today due to an elbow injury. Isaiah Prince gets carted off the field today. Trey Hill also doesn't participate today due to injuries, whatever is going on. And I think we talked about it last night, Bobby, and I want to get your opinion on this as well. Is where do you stand on the importance of an offensive line going into the success of a team? Where does that relate to you?
As far as ranking, it's got to be like probably number one for me. I think it's the most important it's the foundation of your offense. It's gonna set the tone for your running game. It's gonna give your quarterback time, to make plays when needed. It's gonna give the receivers time to get open. All of the success on offense comes back to the O-line. That's where the battle was won. And if you don't have a healthy line going into it, kind of like we saw like last year in Cleveland, their line fell apart.
Yeah.
And the team crumbled, and Indy's line stayed healthy and they had a good season, even with a shit quarterback, because they were able to make way for Jonathan Taylor to do his thing. Those are two good examples of what an offensive line can do for you and can't do for you, whether injuries are, around. And yeah, it's got to be number one on my list. Not
to mention they play as a unit, right?
Yeah.
And we talk about this is your offensive line is only as good as your weakest link, because you can have an elite left tackle or right tackle or center or guard or whatever it is. And it really doesn't matter if the left guard can't hold his weight, because they're always going to, because on the defensive side, you can move the guys around all you want. You can put Aaron Donald outside or inside if you really want to. Obviously he's always going to play inside, but you can match him up against the weaker option. You're not taking your left guard and now moving him over to the right, because that's how the defense is lined up. The defense is actually at the advantage in that regard. So, as a defense, you can kind of pick apart and decide, all right, they're on their backup center, so let's, send the pressure up the middle, and maybe, bring the guys back out a little bit on the outside. So the offensive line is always demoralizing. Those guys are, Iron Men out there. They take the biggest beating, and they get the least amount of credit for the work that they do. So that's always going to be difficult. Like you just said it, for the Browns last year, it was something kind of similar. I thought they held their own, especially for playing second string guys. I don't think the offensive line was necessarily the reason. And here's the other thing too, and what I was going to mention when we were talking about Deshaun, when you talk about the difference between going from Baker to Brissett, the Browns were in the last, in that Steelers game, the second to last game of the year, were playing for their own destiny. You win the last two games, you win the division. And that was with a one-arm Baker. So, obviously injuries are always going to be a topic when you talk about teams that don't live up to expectations, because you can point to it and say, well, if we were at 100%, nobody's ever at 100%.
It's an easy scapegoat.
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah. Here's the thing is
depth is so important.
Yes. So I said it at the beginning of this podcast, talking about kind of the Deshaun Watson, what happens when he comes back, is everything's a perfect world. In the NFL, there is no such thing as a perfect world. You never have a 53-man roster who you thought was going to start the season on the 53-man roster. It just doesn't happen that way. Freak injuries happen obviously very frequently in training camp, right? We just saw one of Ogletree from the Colts. He just tore his ACL. He's out for the entire season. He was kind of the anchor for the Jack Doyle replacement at tight end for the Colts, which has been such an important position for them for the better part of 15 years now. Peyton Manning relied very heavily on the tight end position. It's a part of their offense.
Dallas Clark.
Yeah, Dallas Clark. Thank you. So,
pretty good.
Pretty damn good. So I think there's two parts to this. So an offensive line, that's your brother. Those are your brothers in arms that gets you to the promised land, right?
Right.
And to me, it makes what Nick Chubb does year over year so great, because even Aaron's kind of alluded to it. There were a lot of injuries on the Browns' offensive line, but they were still top 10 across most categories of offensive lines, even to the second part of their depth chart.
Shout out Bo Callahan.
Yeah. So I think as a Bengals fan, where you've watched things fall apart really on that front five, where your brothers in arms aren't locking together. The whole show, and Bobby, I used this example last night, and Aaron and I kind of agreed to it, is that look at what happened to David Carr for the Texans. Right?
Yeah.
David Carr was the best quarterback in college football for 3 of his 4 years. Statistics tell you that he was in top 5 of almost every single passing category in college football. He got to the Texans after being the number 1 overall pick and was out of football in 7 years because his brothers in arms in front of him didn't take care of him. And now a new expansion franchise, it's very challenging to be successful as an expansion franchise, right? It's hard to get the wins. But to me, that's the best example of what an offensive line does for you, that wins you games down the stretch, right? So Aaron and I talked about last night that there's 2 parts of a game that make you really successful down the stretch: a strong offensive line, and then a good special team specialist like a kicker or a punter or whatever it is. So when you look at an offensive line and you look at the injuries that have happened in the AFC North so far out of Cincinnati and Cleveland, there's the alarm bells start going off a little bit, because
right.
Aaron's alluded to it. You almost at this point have to wait until the final roster cuts kind of get shaved down, because the guys like the Trey Hopkins and the JC Treaders, yes, they're available, but there's a guy that's let's say a 4th or a 5th year guy that doesn't get the deal that a lot of these other above average offensive linemen get out of the rip off the draft, that you can bring in and add depth, right? Because depth is the most, Aaron just said it, depth is one of the most important things to an offensive line that you can put together. So I'm really interested to see what the next 2 weeks bring for the AFC North in terms of offensive line. So Brian asked a question too. What's going on with La'el Collins? He's been out of practice for personal issues. So there's really kind of conflicting reports here what's going on with La'el. So La'el did have some injuries when the Bengals signed him that were coming off of last season. He had a hamstring issue in Dallas. He's notoriously had issues with the lower third of his body in his professional career. He is technically cleared to practice, but here's the thing: I want to get your guys' opinion on this. If you are an above average grade offensive lineman and you see some of these injuries start trickling out and falling down upon your offensive line, are you incentivized to go out and participate in preseason, or are you trying to save your legs?
Bobby, go ahead.
I mean, look, Aaron, you mentioned it earlier. The offensive linemen take the biggest beating out of any player on the field outside of like a running back. And if they're ready to go, first game, I don't know if you risk it, man. I would rather my guy get hurt in a game that actually counts than get hurt at the, in the preseason when these games don't mean a absolute damn thing. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, there's a little bit of nuance to that though. So, and one of the points I wanted to make was, losing a guy now is terrible, but it also still gives you time now to gel, because even if you bring in one of these guys that gets cut, 5 great offensive linemen don't mean anything if they don't play well together. And oftentimes when you see a team sign somebody in free agency that is like PFF good, they don't necessarily click right away because they need some time to kind of be like, okay, this guy favors his left a little bit more, which means I need to kind of, that kind of shit. So from the offensive line perspective, and I'm kind of spoiled a little bit with Cleveland because we've had Joe Thomas and Joel Petonio, Mitchell Schwartz are 3 of the most elite Iron Men at the offensive line position you've ever seen. I believe Joel Petonio now holds, if you take the COVID part of it out, because obviously he missed a game due to COVID, but that wasn't injury related. He would have been able to play if it wasn't for the crazy stuff that happened in the league. The guy hasn't missed a snap since he's, I'm going to knock on wood here, but Joe Thomas, one of the greatest things that he ever had was his, obviously is probably one of the best left tackles of all time, but never missed a snap until his last snap.
Yeah.
And then,
right. And then he knew that was it. Right.
Yeah. So I hear that point. And then the other part of nuance to there, Bobby, to your point is I don't want to risk injury either, but for teams that are trotting out rookie quarterbacks or young guys or something like that, I also don't want to put them behind second or third string guys because now I'm risking injury to a more important position, if you will, or the more money-making position. I know there aren't, hey, for the Steelers this year, I know you guys have a rookie quarterback, but outside of that, I know there aren't really many rookie quarterbacks that are expected to play this year, so it's a little bit different. But just in general, for teams that are, like Trevor Lawrence last year, who is going to be, the face of the franchise for years to come, right. I don't really want to send him out there with third stringers either. So there's a little bit of a balancing act there. It kind of depends if you're playing your starting quarterback some drives or some plays in the preseason just to get them ready, you absolutely have to run your first string offensive line out there with them.
Yeah. And I think very similarly to the brother in arms kind of comment that I made is that you have to create the chemistry, right? And for the Bengals, it's imperative because 3/5 of that offensive line is brand new, and potentially 4/5 of that offensive line is going to be brand new. And when you are drafted in the NFL, you are deemed one of the best talents, regardless of if you're pick one or you're Mr. Irrelevant. To get drafted in the NFL means that you're one of the best 253 players to come out of college football. So when a team like Cincinnati, right? Because you can't talk about a team like Cleveland or Indianapolis because they've the foundation is there and it's so solid that a spot doesn't, one piece falling out and coming back in doesn't crack the foundation. Sure, right. You're swinging the sledgehammer against it and it hurts a little bit, but the foundation's there. For the Bengals, the foundation isn't quite there yet, right? I mean, you're talking about Jonah Williams being your anchor at left tackle. That's kind of that's the root of your foundation. And then your other part of that is La'el Collins, who you sign for a free agent contract. And you want to see him be successful, but then even your interior guys, who we talked about last night, are the ones that make your run game successful. And those are going to be likely, as the way it sits right now, 3 new players within that interior offensive line. And chemistry is so important because the way that how fast edge rushers and interior linemen are right now in the NFL, if you don't have good chemistry, you're going to get beat off the ball. And you saw Jackson Carman get beat off the ball a ton against Arizona. And that was lack of chemistry and lack of communication. So for the Bengals to continue the success that they had after last season, they have to build this chemistry now. So I think La'el Collins has to kind of shit or get off the pot and start practicing and building the chemistry with Kappas, so that way on the right side of the line, that everything is shored up. Because yes, they've determined that they're good in their own right. Their PFF numbers are good, as you said, Aaron. But the chemistry is so important because one misread is the difference between Joe Burrow being healthy and Joe Burrow having a season-ending injury. It's so fast. Football is so fast with injury.
It's easily the most important unit in football. You know what I mean? Where
the cohesive
the sum of all your parts is exactly. And I had mentioned Joe Thomas before. Towards the end of his career, the guy was so banged up, but was such an Iron Man that it got to the point where it was show up on Sunday and play left tackle. We don't need you to practice. We don't need.
And he's been very vocal about that too.
Exactly, and he's a big proponent of that. Now there are guys in the league that are veterans that deserve that right. But like for a guy like Nick Harris, who's the center for the Browns, who's now out for the year, this was going to be the first year that he started. I understand why he was playing the first preseason game. You know what I mean? He isn't proven at the NFL level as a starter. I truly believe that preseason football has its value, and I'm glad that the NFL shortened it to 3 games. And you've heard a lot of coaches be very vocal about this point. They're getting a lot more benefit out of the joint practice than you necessarily are the preseason games. Now, that's for the fans. We're not really getting to see the fruits of that. And as NFL junkies, like all three of us, yeah, I'm itching and going, the Browns play Sunday at 1:00. I got to watch it. I got to watch it. It really doesn't mean a whole lot. It's just honestly, the preseason is just a way for the fans to kind of get back into the groove too. It's awesome to see football on the television again. It's awesome to kind of see your 6th round pick make a play and be like, oh, maybe diamond in the rough. That's where preseason is important. Young guys that need to establish themselves, end of the roster fringe guys that are trying to prove themselves. We've seen countless players that have earned the right to be NFL players because of the preseason. I don't want to see it go away. You've also likewise see guys that have, if you were to take the preseason away, would have made the roster that didn't necessarily deserve to be there. So while preseason certainly has a inherent value to talent evaluators, to fans, to the NFL as a whole, these are just unfortunate, casualties to the fact of NFL is a brutal game. And it's really easy after the fact to just go, well, this game means nothing. Why was this guy even playing?
It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter because, so here's the thing, even for Nick Harris, who was designated to start, that those snaps are important to him.
Exactly.
Right? That the preseason, so for the NFL season as a whole, weeks 1 through 18 don't count the preseason, right? That's obvious. But for those guys that are trying to make their cut, even to get on the practice squad, this is the difference between them starting their career or finishing their career, or having to bounce around the junction of the NFL to find their spot, right? And I think the preseason is important because for us, and I've said it on this podcast, I think 3 weeks in a row now, and we've all agreed to it. When the football bug gets under your skin, the preseason just gives you enough to itch, but doesn't crack the skin, right? So then you're ready for football. So the preseason is important, not just for the players, but it's important for the fan base to understand who the next people are that they're supposed to be supporting as well. And it gives you the chance, like you said, if you're watching the Jeffrey Gunthers of the Bengals, the 7th round pick out of Coastal Carolina, or watching undrafted free agent signings in the offseason, or even for Cincinnati's, the high school sports scene is so big for football. Watching the kids that played football in Cincinnati suit up for the Bengals in week 2 of the preseason, it's a really important thing. It's a big moment for that fan base. And by the way, there were 67,000 people at the Bengals preseason game against the Cardinals.
That's wild.
That's a lot of people to go to, or I'm sorry, 60,000. 60,000. We're at a preseason game. 60,700. I misspoke. Yeah. That's a lot of people. Where the average over the last 5 years was 35,000.
Yeah.
So it's, to me, and even for
what's capacity there?
65. 65 includes standing room only, right? So when you look at an NFL stadium, there's probably 50 to 58,000 seats, and then there's so much concrete that you get the standing room out.
Todd just gave the fire marshal's answer.
I don't. It's
you're right though. You're right though. I think Cleveland Brown Stadium is like 71 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for me too, even growing up, that was my opportunity to watch the Bengals was in the preseason, because I just wasn't fortunate enough to get the ticket to go to a regular season game. So for some of the fan base, that's the only chance that they get to watch their professional football team play live. So
it's a lot easier to take young kids to a preseason game, because if you have to leave at halftime, you're not really sweating the fact that you just paid $15 for a ticket. It's that's actually a great point, and I wasn't even thinking about that. That is an opportunity for some people to actually.
That's why that's why we do this podcast.
Yeah, I love that.
We bring like minds together with new perspectives.
I love
it. Absolutely. Well, we're getting kind of towards the end. Chad, if you guys have anything you want us to discuss, please throw it in there. Todd, Aaron, do you guys have anything else you want to discuss this evening?
LeBron James signed a new contract.
He did. So,
which I'm actually, as a Cavs fan, I absolutely love it, because we were going to have a whole season of, is LeBron coming back? I'll take him back.
Hold on, pause it, because I want to ask this question to both of you because I think it's a good question for our podcast here. Does this extension, right? Because you're talking about an extension through 2024 with a player option,
It's 2 years,
25, right? Does this mean that LeBron and Bronny go back to Cleveland for the Swan Song?
The thing with that is LeBron.
It just depends on where Bronny goes.
It depends on where Bronny goes. Yeah, if he goes,
right. There's the caveat. So LeBron,
he'll go.
Bronny,
He'll go somewhere.
yeah. So Bronny right now in the high school basketball ratings, take it with a grain of salt because it is what it is. He's a 3-star recruit. He's a 6'3" He's a 6'3" shooting guard, which is a dime a dozen in college basketball, right? But he is LeBron James' son. It's the same reason that Jeffrey Jordan got to go to the University of Illinois and Michael Jordan's other son got to play at Central Florida because they're Michael Jordan's kids.
Hell, even recently, like Seth Curry was at Duke when Steph couldn't get any offers because they're like, we're not going to miss on. No. But my point is, they're like, well, we're not going to miss on that one again.
Sure. You don't miss on the bloodline, right? You don't miss on the bloodline because the bloodline. Yeah, because it works. It works across professional sports for the most part. There's usually somebody. Look at the Guerreros of baseball and the Griffeys of baseball, right? There's usually something in the mix there that pans out. But I'm interested to hear your perspective. You know, Aaron as a Cleveland sports fan, Bobby as a basketball fan like I am. What does this mean for the NBA in 3 years from now? Because that's when we'll see Bronny in the NBA more than likely.
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, listen, like you kind of alluded to there, we don't really know how Bronny is going to develop as a player. He certainly has the pedigree. I always come back to this, and I hope I can describe this right because it's one of the funniest tweets I've ever seen. It was basically someone quote tweeted this, but it was like LeBron James having this quote about how he wants his son to like carve his own path and, you know, be his own person. And then the quote tweet is like, starting at guard, LeBron James Jr. And he's like, and they're like, hey, who's that guy? Like, you're like, all right, well, you know, he kind of is at an advantage and also a disadvantage, right? Because he's never going to live up to his father's name, most likely. And if he does, that would be absolutely incredible. You had mentioned Jeffrey Jordan. You know, we're starting because we live in this 2022 life. We just saw the highlight of, you know, Bronny yamming on a guy in a summer game,
and Bronny and his brother playing together. Yes, yeah. And his sons are playing together on a
AAU team,
AAU
or something
team.
like that. I'm assuming it's AAU.
And his fucking middle-aged son is 6'6" already. He's 14.
Exactly.
I think I'll get to that.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, Bronny is much more of like a thin guard where his other son is like a thick power forward. So it's like getting opposite ends of LeBron, right? So that's who his sons are. So LeBron has made it pretty well known that he wants to play with his son if he is to make it into the league. And I think that's great. If it ends up being in Cleveland, that's fine. What's going to happen is he's going to get overdrafted because of that. Because I've seen this question posed. If LeBron just decided that he doesn't really care about his legacy, which we know he does, but let's just take this in a vacuum, how long can he actually play in the league? And honestly, the guy can play until he's 48 just because of his size and skill set. He's not going to be the same rim attacker, but he's such an elite passer that'll never get lost.
And we watched Vince Carter evolve his game into being a shooter rather than the dribble drive to the basket guy. Yeah. Right. So, Bobby, where do you stand on this?
Yeah, no, I mean, literally got to the point that I was going to make. He's going to get drafted. Bronny's going to get drafted probably number 1.
No. See, no way. So here's the
because you're getting LeBron too.
Yeah, but you're getting a year of LeBron.
Right. So
think about the dollars.
No, but I hear you. But here's
the number 1 pick.
If he develops his game, he's got to continue to improve and be better.
Here's the thing. A 6'3" shooting guard does not fit into the NBA. LeBron James's son, who is a 6'3" shooting guard, fits into the NBA in the second round. Right? That's where I stand on it.
So, I don't know. I mean, the NBA's gotten a lot smaller and it's gotten a lot more guard dominant. The pendulum's starting to switch a little bit the other way, where you're
one of the most
kind of
dominant players in the league is Stephen Curry, and he's 6 foot.
Exactly. Well, he's like 6'3", 6'4", but he's a skinny rail.
Oh, you guys are cringing me here because if you look at the NBA draft and the top 8 picks of this NBA draft, all of them were 6'7" or taller, and they're all hybrid players. So I don't disagree with you. The dribble drive guard.
He also still has
no. But I was just disagreeing with you with the fact that those guys are destined for the second round, because I don't agree with that at all.
So Bronny Jr. is destined for the second round, right? That's where I see him.
So I'm going to cut in the middle here and take the middle part here.
I think
he will get overdrafted in the sense that he will be a first round pick because of what Rob is talking about in the chat here, saying he'll get drafted higher than he should because they're banking on LeBron getting there. And but he won't get taken. I don't think it would be a lottery pick.
Yeah, I certainly hope not, because here's the thing:
he could develop.
He could. You're right, because if you watch him right now versus even his high school footage, he has turned into a much more aggressive player, and that comes with confidence. And you got to remember, this kid's fucking 16 years old and is still figuring out how to make sure his legs
has time to grow.
Yeah, his legs and his mind are working together. Yeah, so it's a lot to put on a 16-year-old kid. But when you're LeBron James' son, I'm sorry to say this, but there's a lot of expectations for you. It's just inevitable. If you're going to follow in the footsteps of Dad, there's a big expectation.
I do also want to make one more bold prediction. I think his younger brother is going to be a more complete NBA player than Bronny will.
Interesting.
Here's the thing: at 6'6", at 14, if he continues to grow, it's hard to argue with you right now in this exact moment. Now, I mean, he could get to the high school level. I mean, I think maybe he's entering his freshman year. I don't know. I think he's either in 8th grade or going into 9th grade, whatever. But you're right. If he continues to grow and say he ends up being 6'8" or 6'9", that's a different world of basketball for that player, because you could be the hybrid guy that can bring the ball up the court and shoot, or you can put yourself as a post player and still be successful in the NBA. Look at Paolo Banchero, 6'8" or 6'9", and he got drafted number 2 overall, or number 1 overall. So it still works out for you in the end.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, we've seen it all the time where these guys end up having these like freak growth spurts when you think people are done growing, like Anthony Davis or hell, even Giannis. But what's interesting is, we're saying I don't really know what Bronny is going to be like. It's hard to peg somebody in a draft when they're not even in. He's just going to be able to start getting recruited for college. I've heard Oregon, USC, Ohio State.
Rutgers.
Or Jalen Rose is trying to get
Rutgers would love to have him. But here's the thing: what does Bronny have that his peers don't? And it's the resources, right? This guy, since birth, has never played. The Gorilla hoops in your front yard, the really nice front yard hoops. Yeah, think of all the guys who grew up playing with just some shitty fucking milk crate basket is how they got good and they become amazing basketball players, or only can play at the park or have some shitty front yard hoop. Bronny is certainly at an advantage when it comes to the resources of the game. Hey, he's going to go hop in Papa's cryo chamber for the night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that is just something that other guys just don't have the advantage of. So I don't know, man. I mean, there's certainly, like we were talking about, the pedigree or the bloodline or whatever you want, but if Bronny wants to be good, and that's the other thing that I don't think anyone really talks about. I've never really heard Bronny talk. I've never really heard anything other than the fact that, again, who the hell is that? LeBron James Jr.? Yeah, I'm assuming that this is what he wants as a career, but maybe it's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's we really don't know. But again, for LeBron I don't think LeBron, everything he does is calculated. And I don't think he's not having, and by all accounts is a great father, because he really is, in my opinion. One of the better role models that we actually have in our generation.
I just want to say this real quick. I think for our generation, right, for us who saw LeBron James in the 2003 draft get drafted number 1, we've been really fortunate to watch a guy who has really stayed unscathed through the social media world and been an outstanding citizen for professional sports, because it's been really hard to find that. right? And I love that for us as we become parents, and me as a parent now, and you guys as become parents in the future, we can talk about LeBron James and how important he was to basketball. And there's not the gambling thing of Michael Jordan or the Wilt Chamberlain where he slept with 7,000 women.
Tiger
right?
Woods.
Yeah, right. We get to talk. Well, yeah.
I'm just saying, like it's comparable because he was famous when he was 18.
Right. So and even
Kobe.
and Bryce Harper, Bryce Harper too, right? I mean, you saw a guy like Bryce Harper.
But here's the thing: we're just talking about athletes. Take any child prodigy, always burns out. Take an actor, like famous child act, like Drew Barrymore is always the one that everyone thinks of, who just was like addicted to cocaine at 13. Macaulay Culkin,
Lindsay Lohan.
Like, people that are in the public eye at such an early age. Because LeBron got drafted at 18, but he was famous when he was 15.
15. Yeah, he's on the cover of Sports Illustrated at 15 years old. Bryce Harper was on the cover of Sports Illustrated at 16 years old. It's really, really hard to be a professional.
A lot of pressure for a young person, not even an adult.
Yeah, and we get to talk about him being the success story and being the example to the community, which I think is really important.
And we can say too, like, oh, at 18, you're like LeBron drafted at 18, you're an adult. Y'all remember yourself at 18? Y'all remember yourself at 22?
Yeah.
Like the other thing too, and I've heard this
I'd punch that motherfucker in the face.
I always think of Jason Tatum, or I think of maybe even like Devin Booker, or these guys that are really good really early. Karl Anthony Towns. They grew up on social media, where like LeBron James, he was famous by being on a magazine. I don't even think people that are getting recruited right now know what a magazine is. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
these children were raised by social media, and they're much better at the interview aspect of professional sports. They just seem so much more polished now. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not.
I do, because you've learned from watching all the blunders of the past. You learn from the Allen Iversons, the Marshawn Lynches, and those guys from watching them fail in a press conference.
YouTube's one of the best teachers out there.
Yeah, and you develop the mentality of like, I can't fuck up like that because I don't want to be on YouTube. I don't want to be on Twitter as the guy that went into the interview and failed miserably. So yeah, I think you're right. There's nothing else to say. Yeah, social media has shaped the post 19 the athlete born 1997 and up to the athlete now that's 19 to 20 years old, because they grew up on the iPad, the iPhone with 4G, right? They grew up with the ability to get on their phone when mom and dad said turn your phone off, and then watch your favorite athletes or watch your favorite sport and watch the highlight reels, and then you get to the YouTube algorithm and you watch the mistake interviews because of that.
Right.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, a guy like Devin Booker probably doesn't exist in 2001 because guys like AI who were getting arrested when they were 18 and maybe weren't going to get the chance to play professional basketball and then get drafted in the first round.
But there's also the reverse side of that too, where Allen Iverson's situation when he was 18, I know there was some like video footage of like the bowling alley situation. There's a bowling alley. There's a cell phone everywhere now. It's like everything is on tape, and you were just you were basically followed around
cameras,
right? And you were basically being followed around by the paparazzi, which is just Joe Citizen with a cell phone camera. The second you are like a freshman in high school that shows any type of promise, you just have like this weight of the world put on top of you almost immediately.
Right,
and,
because there's a social media
respect for those kids. I have a lot of respect for those kids because I just think of who I am now and who I was when I was 18. I couldn't have handled that. I would be in a terrible, terrible place right now if I had that fame, money, and pressure at that type of age.
Absolutely. 100%. All right, boys. Do we have anything else?
Did you guys see the coldest? Who's the guy? He was like it's like a Tennessee wide receiver who, so the name, image, and likeness. There's a guy, and I'm losing his last name, but I can look it up immediately because it'll be the first thing that comes up. DeColdest Crawford. he did a commercial for like a local, what fucking state was it? Anyways, it doesn't matter. Oh, Nebraska. He's in Lincoln, Nebraska. He did like a commercial for like a local air conditioning company. And the acting is terrible, but it's great. But because this guy's name is The Coldest,
yeah, and the NIL exists.
It's like it's perfect. Like a perfect storm. And if you guys haven't watched it, please
back was the company he did the commercial.
Please, when we're done, just watch this commercial. It'll take you 30 seconds of your time. It is phenomenal. Anyone here listening in the chat, I encourage you to watch this. It's phenomenal. It's great. I love it. That's it. That's all I got.
That's crazy.
Great name.
Crazy.
The
NIL has created so much world for 18-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. I love it. I think it's
I
great.
do too.
It's the best
Chicago's waxing that ass apparently 24-0 against the old Seahawks.
Here's the thing. Pete Carroll is 110 years old. And
he doesn't seem like it. He's the oldest coach in football, and he just
fire Pete Carroll.
I know
Get
Bobby
him
hates
out of
Pete
the
Carroll.
league.
He hates Pete. Bobby hates Pete
with a passion.
Can I ask why? I've always heard you hate Pete Carroll, but I don't know that I've ever gotten the why behind it.
Well, obviously he left UFC in absolute shambles.
Everyone does that. There's so many coaches I can give you examples that have done
because he's a piece of shit. And then he gets to the NFL and cost Marshawn Lynch championship.
Sorry that football teams we root for can't just have 3 coaches in their history.
Anybody but fucking Pete Carroll. Anybody but Pete Carroll.
I'm just saying there's a lot of people that jump ship early, and it happens all the time.
Yeah,
I get the USC
for sure.
But he didn't jump ship at USC early. He just left because he knew he was about to get fucking caught. It's the same reason John Calipari left Memphis when he left.
But that's
Memphis.
what I'm saying. Yeah, that shit happens all the time.
I'll wear the UK hat. Meant that John Calipari was
it
cheater
Calhoun at UConn? That happened too.
Yes. Yes. It happened all over college sports. It did not matter. It was just a matter of people getting caught. Yes. Penny Hardaway got fucking caught the year before NIL. Penny Hardaway got caught.
Bring him back.
It just happens. And Ralph Sampson went to 2 different schools and got caught. Like, it just happens. When you want to win, sometimes dirty money gets involved in college sports because it's a fucking dog-eat-dog world. It just so happens that Nick Saban walks this earth on a 10-foot cloud that's untouchable. I have no idea how he's got through unscathed, but he just did it.
Yeah. So, Bobby, I'm sorry. I asked you a question, and then I completely just railroaded you. So,
no, you're okay. It's okay. No, I mean, I've got beef with Pete Carroll, obviously, for the way he left USC, kind of like how I can't stand John Calipari, and I think they need to fire him. It's just the icing on the cake for me was that the not giving Marshawn Lynch the ball. That is where the majority of my beef lies with him. Like, how do you not give him there's not one human being on this planet that, number one, didn't know it was going to Marshawn. Everybody thought it was going to Marshawn. Number two, nobody was going to fucking stop him.
Yeah.
Nobody was going to stop Marshawn getting that end zone. I don't give a shit who you are.
And
we lost Aaron again.
Man. I'll bring it back.
Disappearing on us.
I don't know what keeps happening, but I got great internet over here, and I get on rants.
Aaron is using Boost Mobile, and the rest of us are on a national service provider. That's what's happening right now.
That's because you guys are yuppies, and I'm here with the people.
Hey, I don't have a choice. I have to have Spectrum.
I have Cox, which is I just love saying.
Which is Spectrum. That is Spectrum.
Yeah, it's all the same shit. It's all. Anyways, the irony of that is the Marshawn Lynch thing is Pete Carroll is notorious for wanting to run the football and basically chasing Russell Wilson out of town for refusing to throw it. And then in the one situation where he actually should have ran the ball, he's like, let's let Russell Wilson do it, which is hilarious. And Tom Brady got another Super Bowl out of it. So yeah, I get it. But like, it's hard for me to say like a Super Bowl winning coach is just trash because he's had some moments. I don't want to be the person sticking up for
people,
Pete Carroll, but anytime
like
I bring him up, you're like, I hope he dies.
Carroll's a good players coach. It's everything that I've read. I don't just something about his face. I just want to punch
it's
him.
because you know you're never going to look that good that old.
If Bobby is anything, he is a man of passion, and when his guns are stuck deep in the ground, he's rooted those guns. So
I'm the same way. I get that.
Yeah.
Yep. That's why I've hated. Well, I actually ended up being right about this, but I hated Kanye West in like 2007. I was like, that guy's a douche. He's so rude to everybody.
Because of fish sticks.
Yeah, exactly. I just basically form all of my social opinions off of South Park and George Carlin.
God, your outlook on society is cold and dark.
There was a guy I used to work with at this company, the last company I work with, that just described me as a cynical prick. And I was like, yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Yeah, that's fine. At least you own it, right? That's the important.
He said it in a nice way. Or no, he called me a cynical fuck, I think. Not a prick.
Yeah.
He wasn't being mean about it.
Tomato.
I'd rather be called
Mr.
fuck than
Stewart,
a
welcome
prick.
to the show.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well,
Todd, do you have anything else?
No, I think we covered all of it. I think for next Thursday, I think it's a good opportunity to talk college football. I think it's about that time. We're talking a lot of NFL. I think college football needs a little bit of love.
College football is going to get some love.
Especially for my kitty cats here getting knocked
some
into
mock
the top
draft
25
talk
here.
Some
mock
draft talks, some
talk.
NFL futures.
Yeah, we got a lot of heat coming for y'all in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah,
It's going to be
we're finally
really,
starting
really
to
fun.
get into the meat and the potatoes,
which I love. And I'm going to take this last moment.
Season.
I'm going to take this last moment of tonight to put the dirt on. I don't know that I'm going to have to come on here every week and talk about Deshaun Watson anymore.
Yeah, I think
I've had to talk about it once a week, every week I've been on. That's actually how I got brought in. It was Corey was like, I'd love to get a Cleveland perspective on it. When they traded for him, and I've had to talk about it every week.
I feel like that was like fucking months ago.
It was.
And look at you now. You're in the fucking intro. You're a member of Rally Towel Sports. It worked out great for you.
Yeah, we're still stiff arming Browns and dunking on Cavs guys. But yeah.
we love having you on here.
I'm not pictured, but my man Najee Harris is absolutely
that's you
trucking
being
Cleveland
pictured
Browns,
right there.
So I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
All right, boys. Well, that's gonna wrap it up for us tonight, chat. We will be back live for you guys. Are we just gonna start doing Wednesdays and Thursdays now? Are we kind of done with Tuesdays, or what do you guys?
I think we're gonna have to figure it out. We'll figure it out.
TBD will definitely be back Wednesday. We've got some things to discuss. We'll put a post up and let you guys know what the verdict is.
We got something.
We do.
Big
we got some big news.
Wednesday.
We got some big news coming up here in the next couple of weeks that we cannot wait to drop to you guys. That will be coming out soon. But until then, you guys have a wonderful weekend. Be safe, and we will catch you guys next week.